I don't know why I have a bug up my ass about the left more than I used to. It's like this. There's an ugliness they never used to have. The liberals I grew up respecting, none of them are like this. Democrats have become like a royal family that, because of so much incest, has unfortunately had children who are retarded. I watched the evolution of both these guys. This didn't happen overnight. In 2022, before he owned Twitter, Elon tweeted this chart depicting how he felt about the liberal side having shifted so much that it left a basically liberal centrist like him now labeled a conservative. I related. I related to the kind of mean girl you get from the cool kids in Wokeville when you're perceived that way. They tried real hard to cancel Rogan a few years ago, and when Elon hosted Saturday Night Live in 2021, well before he was a Trumper, some of the cast members gave him the cold shoulder for the sin of being rich. You think people don't remember when you do to them, that it's not going to have blowback?
Something finally snapped for Bill Maher. After years of warnings, after a bold prediction almost nobody believed, after watching the party he loved ignore every signal, he's reached his breaking point. And now the question everyone's asking is he actually done with the left? Because here's what makes this story so compelling. Maher didn't just wake up one day and flip. This has been building for years. He called the 2024 Kamala Harris loss before it happened against all odds, against the consensus, against the mockery of his own peers. And when it came true, the left didn't thank him. They didn't reflect, they doubled down. So now Maher is standing at a crossroads, and the whole political world is watching to see which way he turns. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, because we're about to trace exactly how Bill Maher got here and find out if he's really walking away.
What is liberalism if you don't win elections? Last week, Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton said, "I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that." Yes, there's the problem in a nutshell. Because Congressman Moulton sounds reasonable to me, but his campaign manager immediately resigned in protest. Let me make this as plain as I can to the smart people. The campaign manager who resigned, yeah, let that person go.
Bill Maher is exhausted. Not the kind of tired you sleep off, the kind that builds up over a decade of watching a movement slowly lose its mind. Years, he's been sounding the alarm about a vocal fringe taking over the Democratic Party, a minority amplified by social media into something that felt much bigger than it actually was, yet somehow managed to drown out every moderate voice in the room. Maher has been particularly sharp in pointing out how that fringe pushed culturally charged ideas, terms like latinx, hyper-focused identity politics, language policing into the mainstream as if they were the party's core message. In his view, what started as genuine inclusion turned into something far more alienating, not just to conservatives, but to the everyday voters Democrats desperately need. The messaging stopped feeling like governance. It started feeling like a lecture, and voters noticed. The 2024 election didn't just sting, it sent a message. And yet, somehow, the party still didn't fully hear it. But Maher isn't done laying out his case. And what comes next is where it really gets complicated.
Making too woke be a cancelable offense. It's important for America to have a center-left party, and for that party to be competitive. And a good first step toward that goal would be to make the voters not want to punch you in the face. I will conclude by saying the reason I'm so mad at the Democrats is because as a voter, the issues that were important to me were democracy and the environment. And now, there's no one to champion or defend either of them because you, with your aggressively anti-common sense agenda and shitty exclusionary attitude, blew it.
Here's the crux of it, and this is where Maher's frustration stops being abstract and becomes deeply personal. He doesn't just think the left lost its way strategically, he thinks it abandoned real people. In his view, the party that once stood for working Americans' kitchen table issues like the economy, public safety, the cost of living gradually became more concerned with satisfying a hyper-online activist base than actually governing. Maher argues that party leaders grew more afraid of Twitter backlash than of failing their constituents. Debates over ever-shifting language rules, policies shaped more by social media pressure than public consensus, officials willing to sidestep scientific nuance to avoid activist blowback. He sees all of it as symptoms of the same disease. A party that stopped leading and started performing. And to Maher, that's not just bad politics, it's a betrayal of the voters who trusted them. But that's only part of the story, because the next issue Maher raises cuts even deeper.
Lost everything. House, Senate, White House, Supreme Court, and left us completely unprotected and ready to be violated.
Here's where it gets blunt. Maher's argument isn't complicated. The left, in his view, stopped representing people and started representing an ideology. And when ideology drives policy more than reality does, you don't just lose elections, you create problems. Maher has been consistently critical of what he sees as a shift from merit to optics, where decisions in hiring, leadership, and admissions increasingly appear driven by identity factors rather than track record or ability. He's pointed to diversity mandates in public institutions, corporate leadership quotas tied to race or gender, university admissions policies that weight identity over achievement. And his concern isn't with diversity itself, it's with what happens when representation becomes the goal rather than the outcome. When you put the wrong person in the right job because it looks good, he argues, you don't just risk poor performance, you hand your opponents the exact ammunition they need. And you leave the voters who cared about results feeling like they were an afterthought. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn.
It's too early to strategize. Democrats have been having a lot of donor retreats lately where liberal strategists hold ideathons, where they try to figure out why they keep losing elections. You know, apart from using words like ideathon. And now one idea that's getting a lot of attention is the Dems need to find their Joe Rogan, a liberal Joe Rogan, because that's why Kamala lost. Republicans have a podcast. Okay, maybe. Or you could consider this. Instead of conjuring up a new Joe Rogan, ask yourself why you lost the old one. Because he used to be on your side. He smoked pot on the air. I don't think he's that much of a far-right ideologue.
Something is happening on the left that even the left can't explain away anymore. It's not just losing voters. It's losing voices, influential, prominent, once allied voices, and the bleeding hasn't stopped. Figures like Joe Rogan, who was never a conservative, drifted away not because the right pulled him, but because the left pushed him. The growing intolerance, the ideological rigidity, the sense that the coalition had become less of a big tent and more of a purity test, he felt it. And he left. But here's the detail that really stands out. Even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the most prominent progressive voices in the country, has started distancing herself from the word woke. Let that land for a second. When the people who built a movement start abandoning its language, that's not evolution, that's damage control. It means even they know the brand has become a liability. And if the movement's own standard bearers won't defend its vocabulary, what does that tell you about the voters who were never fully on board in the first place?
The evolution of both these guys. This didn't happen overnight. In 2022, before he owned Twitter, Elon tweeted this chart depicting how he felt about the liberal side having shifted so much that it left a basically liberal centrist like him now labeled a conservative. I related to the kind of mean girl you get from the cool kids in Wokeville when you're perceived that way. They tried real hard to cancel Rogan a few years ago. And when Elon hosted Saturday Night Live in 2021, well before he was a Trumper, some of the cast members gave him the cold shoulder for the sin of being rich. You think people don't remember when you do this to them? That it's not going to have blowback?
And Maher knows exactly what that kind of abandonment feels like because it happened to him. The moment he started pushing back on woke orthodoxy, the industry turned cold. Nominations dried up. The unspoken message was unmistakable: get back in line or get pushed out. He wasn't debated. He was quietly sidelined. But again, Maher is quick to point out this wasn't just his experience. Joe Rogan faced coordinated deplatforming campaigns. Elon Musk became a target the moment he started challenging prevailing narratives, a conflict that ultimately led him to buy Twitter outright. Maher's point isn't to defend every choice these figures made. It's to identify the pattern. When dissent gets punished instead of debated, when disagreement triggers a coordinated takedown rather than a conversation, that's not a healthy political movement. That's a system designed to enforce silence, and it's costing the left far more than it realizes.
That's how politics works these days. One side gets elected precisely because the other side was just in power and pushed their agenda way too far and drove people in the opposite direction. The pendulum swings back and forth with people not voting for anything, but just to get rid of the latest extremists who tried to remake America in their image instead of just governing.
So why did it all go so wrong? According to Maher, the answer is actually pretty simple. Democrats stopped governing and started engineering. Instead of solving problems, they became obsessed with remaking the culture, pushing sweeping social changes that many voters never asked for, never fully understood, and ultimately never accepted. And the backlash wasn't subtle. It showed up at the ballot box in 2024 in a way that couldn't be explained away or rationalized. But here's the part that Maher finds most alarming: the damage didn't stop at losing elections. The party has been losing credibility, losing relevance, and watching its own prominent supporters slowly walk away. When both voters and high-profile allies start exiting at the same time, Maher argues that's not a rough cycle, that's an identity crisis. And those don't fix themselves with a better slogan or a new spokesperson. So what does Maher think the actual solution is?
Don't give me the
Let's
ick.
hear it directly from him.
You know what the ick is, right? It's a term mostly used in the dating world to describe that moment when one of the people, usually the man, does something so icky that the woman cannot forgive it or forget it. Like sending a pic or being mean to the waitress, paying for dinner with a coupon.
Here's something important to understand: Bill Maher hasn't left the left. Not yet. But the window for keeping him and the millions of voters who think like him is closing fast. He's identified as a liberal for most of his adult life. Winning him back isn't some fantasy, but it won't happen by default, and it won't happen without real change. In Maher's view, the path forward starts with one thing: discipline. The party needs to make a conscious decision to dial back the culture-driven extremism that's been alienating mainstream voters for years. That means less performative politics and more practical governance, less social media appeasing and more kitchen table problem solving. And critically, it means the moderate wing of the party needs to stop ceding ground to the fringe and start fighting for the identity of the movement they actually believe in. Because right now, the loudest voices are winning by default, not because they represent the majority, but because the majority has stayed quiet for too long.
Cheryl Hines, who Larry David was quoted as describing as the best person I've ever met, the one person in Hollywood who doesn't have a single enemy. Well, now she does. Because she didn't throw her husband under the bus when her husband made a decision about something which she's made plain she disagrees with, but that didn't satisfy the obnoxious posers on the aforementioned far left. Thousands tweet screamed at Cheryl things like, "How do you live with yourself? Do better. I can't even enjoy the episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm with you in them anymore. It's no wonder Larry divorced you." Yeah, that's a character on TV, but okay.
And nothing, in Maher's view, illustrates the left's self-destruction more vividly than cancel culture. This isn't just about online drama or social media pylons. Maher argues it's about a systematic attempt to enforce ideological conformity where even minor deviations from the approved position can lead to public shaming, deplatforming, lost partnerships, and destroyed reputations. No nuance allowed, no room for growth, no tolerance for honest disagreement. He's watched it happen to comedians, commentators, academics, and public figures who simply asked uncomfortable questions or expressed unpopular opinions. And the chilling effect it creates goes far beyond the individuals targeted. It makes everyone else look over their shoulder, self-censor, and think twice before speaking honestly. Maher's argument is damning. The left, which once championed free speech and open dialogue as core values, has built a culture that actively suppresses both. And the contradiction couldn't be more glaring.
The tweet that got the most attention was from actor Bradley Whitford, who wrote, "Hey, Cheryl Hines, way to stay silent while your lunatic husband throws his support behind the adjudicated who brags about stripping women of their fundamental rights. Gutsy. Great example for the kids, profile and courage." Yeah, well, you know what I think is not gutsy? Mansplaining to a woman, but of course not to her face. How she should sacrifice her marriage. Also, you could read something on Twitter that met with your approval. You want to know why I have a bug up my ass about the left more than I used to? It's like this. There's an ugliness they never used to have. The liberals I grew up respecting, none of them are like this. Going after the wife, even the mafia doesn't do that.
And that contradiction more than any single policy or election loss is what's driving people away. Because according to Maher, it's not just that the far left attacks those who disagree. It's how far they're willing to take it. Once you're targeted, it doesn't stop with you. Families get dragged in. Spouses face harassment. Close associates become collateral damage. What should be a political disagreement turns into a personal vendetta with no clear end point. For Maher, that crossed a line. This isn't passionate advocacy anymore. It's a climate of fear and intimidation, one that doesn't just push away moderates, it corrodes trust within the party itself. And when thoughtful, well-meaning critics look at that environment and decide the cost of speaking up is simply too high, they don't argue back. They quietly walk away. And the left loses another voice it desperately needed to hear. That's not winning. That's how movements hollow themselves out from the inside. If this breakdown resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe because we're just getting started on stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.